Oh no. Hello and welcome to another episode of Crizzy Books. I'm Crizzy or Criz, but only my homeboys call me Criz. Caliban's War. Caliban's War. Book number 2 in the gigantic 9-book series, The Expanse, by James S.A. Corey, which is actually 2 people, I'm pretty sure. So, I didn't know that. I read Leviathan Wakes over a year ago, and I finally got around to this one. I suck at series. I'm really bad at it, especially if they're super long like this. I've already watched the TV show. I am actually a pretty big fan of it, and so I wanted to read the source. So far, so good. It has been really great. I think Leviathan Wakes is fantastic. 5-star book. Great stuff. Edge of my seat, gigantic stakes. This giant space opera setting up a huge expansive world in the future that plays out in space, on Earth, on Mars, on different planets and moons. And then introducing this new kind of threat that is alien in nature, that no one really knows what it does. We can't get close enough to it to really understand what it can actually do. I just think that it's so far been fantastic. But let's get into number 2, Caliban's War. In Caliban's War, we pick up where we left off from Leviathan's Wake. The proto-molecule is doing something on Venus. It's changing the planet into something. We're just not sure. We're on Ganymede, where we're following a young girl, May. I never really figured out what to call her. I called her both throughout the whole thing. She is taken into a lab by some sketchy people who she doesn't know, but they take her into a back room and she disappears. Then we go to the surface of Ganymede, where we meet one of our new heroes, Bobbie, a Martian Marine, total badass. And she's on patrol. And in the distance, they see shooting and U.S. Marines running towards them. So they're preparing themselves for a big fight with these UN Marines, and then they figure out that they are actually running from something, not towards them. This something is a giant blue mutated glowing monster. It takes out all of the Marines, both UN and Martian, except for Bobbie. She gets tossed aside and becomes the only surviving person. Bobbie's picked up, taken care of, then taken to Earth to become a political pawn. Then we return to our real heroes, the crew of the Rocinante. They are doing contract work for the OPA. They hear about what's going on Ganymede, that there seems to be some kind of fallout happening. So they go there to bring rescue food, rations, things like that. And also in an attempt to kind of understand what is actually going on over there, because this seems a little weird. Something seems off about all this. There they meet Prax, who is the father of whatever. There they meet Prax. He is the father of May, and he is trying to enlist the crew of the Rossi to help him to find his daughter. And they decide, okay, well, we'll help you out. Maybe you'll help us uncover, what's actually going on here. And very quickly they get into a heavy scuffle where a lot of people die, but they figure out some clues. And what do you know? The proto-molecule is involved, which means that it's probably being weaponized by someone. I'm going to try and go through this because it's a long book, but eventually the crew figure out where May is being held, who is behind it. We also get introduced to another new character, Avasarala. She is a UN diplomat, and she plays the game. And her and Bobbie end up linking up. They become very close allies. Bobbie kind of being her right-hand person. Eventually, these two groups, the Rossi, Avasarala, and Bobbie, they meet up in space on the way to get May and to hopefully stop whoever is weaponizing this protomolecule. Then there's a huge standoff outside of Ganymede between the UN, Mars, and these turncoat fleets that are working for a man named Wynn. He is behind a lot of what's going on with this weaponization program. This big ass fight ends with the good guys, are there good guys or bad guys in this? But the good guys winning. May is found. She's rescued. The crew return home with bright future prospects. And then Venus shoots out some giant structure into space and no one knows what it's doing. And then our favorite old detective, Miller, appears in front of Holden as some kind of force ghost or something. And that's where it ends. Much like the first entry, I really liked this. The characters, again, so distinct, and you love them and you hate them, but you fully understand them and what their motives are. They all feel very individual from each other. And we stick with the structure of switching from character to character in this one, just like in the last one. I love this format. I think it keeps things moving and keeps things interesting. Every chapter feels like a cliffhanger for that said character. The suspense is always high, and I think that this format lends a lot to that. In terms of how this book is written and how it flows, it's great. It doesn't bog itself down with too much of the sciencey talk. It's still there, but it's brief. It's just enough to scratch any nerd itch that you might have. It tells you what this piece of technology might be, and then it moves on. I think it's really accessible in terms of sci-fi, and it's epic in scale, and yet it still somehow feels very small because who we're following these individual characters on board small ships or in their tiny offices or apartments. It feels intimate but massive. Like I mentioned earlier, we have really a new cast of characters. We get Bobbie, the Martian Marine, who I love. She is my new favorite. She's a total badass. She don't take no shit from nobody. She is awesome. We have Prax, who is the botanist from Ganymede, trying to find his daughter. I wasn't as into Prax as the other characters. He's so grief-stricken, and he really didn't do much throughout the story. He was interesting to read, and he does go through a lot of emotional moments. He adds a ton of emotional weight to this book that I think a lot of our other characters aren't experiencing. So I think he helps in that regard. All of our characters in this are very heroic or confident or capable, and Prax is not that. He can barely operate a gun. He gets scared and kind of poops his pants when things hit the fan. And I do kind of like that difference in what we're dealing with here. The crew of the Rossi has to constantly talk him down or deal with his mistakes because he doesn't know what he's doing. He's completely out of his element most of the time. But he also does bring his own expertise and his own perspective to this crew and helps them in the ways that he can. Avasarala, big hard ass. I do like her a lot, but it can be a little overdone sometimes. She knows the game and she's gonna play it. She's very much into the political game and playing that game, always trying to have the upper hand on anybody. And with her character, we get a new side that we haven't been shown very much of, which is the political side of things. It's boring, it's annoying, bureaucracy, not really my cup of tea, but it is important to the story because a lot of the decisions that are made have to go through a lot of bureaucratical, political red tape. And so having her there and her perspective and how she's navigating all of this and positioning herself, it is pretty interesting. On top of that, then you get some fun things like espionage and backstabbing, and so that's fun. In terms of the story, I thought that it was pretty good, but I also didn't feel like it moved forward very much in terms of what happened. The Leviathan Wakes is so epic and crazy, and the stakes are so high in it, that this one kind of just felt like almost a side story to that. Nothing much has changed. Somebody is trying to weaponize a protomolecule. It just seems like the story's kind of putzing around a little bit while Venus is doing whatever the hell it's doing. Miller is sorely missed. I love that character. I hated to see him go, but I am very excited about his Force Ghost returning. And yeah, it does feel just very similar in beat and plot-wise to the first one. It's on a bit of a smaller scale. There's obviously more than what I explained. There's a lot of smaller things like the Rossi's fallout with the OPA, Bobbie's internal struggles with being a traitor to Mars and what does she do now, and Holden and the crew having their issues, and Holden having some massive forms of PTSD and he's not really sure how to handle those things. Prax being slandered by his ex-wife, that was all kind of crazy. It adds a lot of depth to these characters that we already do kind of know, but even the new ones, we get more to them than that. It all is a very well-rounded story and cast of characters. There's also lots of zombies. spraying goo. But at the end of the day, it's heavy on the action, and it's heavy on the suspense, and the space battles, and the zombie goo, and I enjoyed the hell out of it. I thought it's a great sequel. I'm gonna give Caliban's War a 4.5 out of 5. I don't think that it hits the same marks as the first one, and there were some parts in the politics that I just couldn't really get into. But ultimately, you know, it's a really good contained side story that I think is setting up the next one with a massive amount of interest for me, and I'm probably going to get into it sooner rather than later. My goal is to hopefully finish this series this year. I said at the beginning, I'm bad at series. I really am. I suck at them, especially when they're this long and every book is like a 500 plus. I really struggle to continue on with them. I think it took me about a decade to read The Dark Tower, but I really do want to finish this one this year, because I also don't want to start any other series without finishing this one. So if you have read this series, or you intend to read them, or are seeing this well into the future of when I recorded it, hopefully the other ones are out and you can go and check those reviews out. But what do you think? Have you read number 2 of The Expanse, Caliban's War? What did you think of it? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and as always, thank you for watching. Bye.